Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Shaping Success with myself and Robert Watson. Thank you for joining us on Wednesday. We're halfway through the week, and I feel kind of weird because I start to think about that now. Used to be like, hey, you know what? We got to live every day like it's the last day, and we need to do everything that we possibly can. But it's also nice to have a little bit of a break. So getting about halfway there is kind of nice.
No, it really is. It's funny. I was looking at the headlines this morning, which is what I always do, and I was thinking about the things we've been talking about. And good morning, Nikki. It was seeing all the noise out there, and I was thinking, geez, people, you don't really realize that all that crap that you're trying to decipher is just noise.
Yeah,
If this is what they want you to see, imagine what they're doing that you can't see. It's like a magic act.
right.
And so there's a lot of, we're getting away from, I think we're getting away from the core issues that you and I were talking about before. And I was talking to a friend last night and she said, you don't really do politics. And I said, no. I said, I do policy.
Right.
Either the policy is good for us as a country, in my opinion, of course,
Hmm.
it's good for us or it's not. I don't care which side offers it. I don't care which side supports it. I'm not interested in politics.
Right.
I'm interested in policy. And yeah, as I was looking at those headlines, I was going, oh, geez, what a waste of energy.
Well, and I think that a lot of times too that people don't understand is your previous job was to analyze the situation and pick the best of both sides of that situation, figure out which one is going to be the most probable to work or not work, and when you do that, when you have that analytical mind, you can look at things and you can say, well, this doesn't make sense or that doesn't make sense, and why would we do this if that doesn't work that way? And I think that's the biggest thing that most people do is they hear what they want to hear. The Doge situation is like we're eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, but all they hear is that we're going to get a check. Like they don't care about all that other stuff that went in to make that happen. That's just a small example, and I know that that's very surface level, but that's kind of where it's at. Like you hear the big headline, just like you said. A lot of people will scroll through the news and just read the headline, but not actually dive into the actual story, and then
Right.
figure out what the other side of that is. My friend Jay and I were talking yesterday about someone who posts things here and there on social media about what is actually going on, and like a bunch of the things that are listed, excuse me, a bunch of the things that are listed make no sense. And it's like we're posting this stuff, we're strewing this misinformation. I mean, one of them was like Elon Musk is using Air Force One as a personal ride. And it was like, okay, so if you dive into that, there is no way that Elon Musk is jumping on Air Force One and just going anywhere he wants without. And why would the richest man in the world need a free ride on an airplane when he has his own planes, probably? But saying that they're doing this all on the taxpayer's dime, well, if he's an advisor to Donald Trump and he gets on Air Force One with Trump when he's going somewhere, is that a free ride, really? No, he's just going with him and he's along for the ride. So these are all things that you make up in your mind to kind of justify as the narrative that you want to hear.
Yeah, we were discussing last night. This is strategic, graduate level strategic communications class. We were talking about how you get rid of, things like conspiracy theories and stuff when you've got, we were talking about last night, we were on the medical side, we were talking about vaccines and
Hmm.
everything's getting thrown into one loop. A vaccine that is 80 years old and a vaccine that's 8 months old is being thrown into the same pot and called pro or con. And I'm
Right.
like, no, it's an 80-year-old vaccine that has an incredible track record versus something that's 8 months old that has no track record. How are you throwing them in the same? How are you anti or for just because? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And so we were like, how do you get people off of that narrative and that all or nothing kind of mentality? Really hard. And they were doing the research on what would be impactful. In other words, is it the facts or do you need to tell them a story? And to be honest with you, it's inconclusive.
Yeah.
Some people are moved by facts, some people are moved by the story, but the reality is you can't, it's like lumping people together,
Right.
right? By skin color, by race, religion, creed. Everybody who is this is that. They're not.
Right.
People are really individual. Now, there's some realistic things that you can kind of throw in a group, but by and large, you need to take people one at a time.
Yeah, and I think that it's funny because there is a lot of people, just like you're talking about this vaccine thing, and I think we might have touched on it last week, or I was having a conversation with someone else, but my daughter goes in to get her vaccines that, like they recommend that you have these vaccines, which are like, the MMR and the tetanus and Tdap. Like these are all vaccines, like you said, that have been around for a long time. Now, before 4 or 5 years ago, they said that an anti-vaxxer was someone who just didn't want their kids to have vaccines, period, because they were afraid of what they would do to them and they don't care. They think that the harm is worse than what would happen. But then they come out with this mandatory vaccine that they're telling everyone they have to take for COVID, which has been just pushed out as fast as it could and then basically tested on the whole country. And they're finding out that there's so many things that are wrong with it, but it was just a big giant lab test for the whole country. And when you get a vaccine, something like the MMR, which is supposed to eradicate measles, you sit there and you look at and you look at the track record of that, where it takes away the chances of getting measles. Not everyone gets it, or if they did, it was like a breakthrough case that was really bad. And then you get this COVID vaccine that you could still get COVID when you have it. And like the track record was like way higher than people who had these breakthrough cases with the COVID vaccine. And then you're sitting there going, well, of course it wasn't tested. We don't know that it works. We don't know all these things that we knew about this other one that's been tested for, like you said, 80 years or whatever. So there's a big difference between calling someone an anti-vaxxer and then calling someone an anti-vaxxer just because they don't want this one vaccine. It's insane.
Right.
There's millions of people in this world who don't get the flu shot every single year. Okay.
And I'm one of them.
Right.
Because, literally when I got the flu shot in basic training, it gave me the flu and put me in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
My body does not respond well to the flu shots. I don't get the flu. The only time I've ever had the flu is when I got the shot.
Right.
But that is very unique to me.
Mm-hmm.
I am not on any platform saying, don't take a flu shot. I'm the last person. My kids just know Dad doesn't take it because Dad's body responds badly to it. That's it. Just one person, one situation. I am an outlier. I know that. That's why you never hear me talking about it.
Right.
And that's completely different.
Yeah, and that's the problem with these headlines is they're lumping everyone into this spot because they feel like but that's what sells. Like that's what, oh my gosh, so and so's an anti-vaxxer, they're gonna die, and it's like not an anti-vaxxer. You look at like RFK, that's kind of what his deal is like he's said multiple times, he's not an anti-vaxxer. He's for science, testing, and getting the data and making sure that it is something that is actually safe before you inject it into your body. You wouldn't just go frickin' put like some foreign substance in your body just because I told you that it was good for you. You're gonna do you shouldn't, but you're gonna do the research. There are some people who just are sheep and listen to whoever tell them what they want to hear.
Right, and I'm not even so opposed to what happened in COVID. I'm realizing that you had a pandemic and the powers that be felt very uncomfortable, like the situation was out of control. And so their effort was, Operation Warp Speed was an idea to get something out that could do the most good that they believed would happen. And I'm like, I understand your point. I do. I have no problem. But what we also have to realize is it's a big step when you go from here's something that I think will make a huge difference to it's mandatory.
Right.
That's a huge step in telling people, wow, okay, that's tough. That's very tough. That's where I understand people wanting to push back, right? Yeah. And saying, well, hold on a second. This doesn't have a lot of testing. I understand your heart's in the right place, blah, 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 blah. I get it. And so I think that's what we got away from is the nuance of the argument. And we got into this all or nothing, black or white.
Right.
And that's where we lost ourselves, and we should have stayed in the nuance of the argument. The nuance of the argument was, what about what I do makes it so important that I be mandatorily vaccinated?
Yeah.
Okay. Am I in a high area? Explain this to me. Listen, I'll listen to a logical argument. I'll take the risk if this is something that needs to be done because I'm going to have contact with whatever, and you can say, okay, I'll listen.
Yeah.
I think that's what we get lost in these all or nothing arguments. We really do.
Yep.
Everybody is different like a snowflake.
Yeah. Not calling anyone a snowflake. Yeah. I agree. And if you guys are, we're just laughing at the comments that Nikki has left in the chat room. So feel free to chime in if you're in the chat room and if you have any comments or anything like that. But it is kind of funny to think about that. And then we've talked about this before. We talked about, like Robert training and the things the supplements that he takes and things like that. Like everybody's body reacts differently. And it's just like alcohol. You have a drink of bourbon, or you have a drink, and some people with one drink are on their face, and other people, you can't even tell that they had it. So anything that, your body takes or my body takes, or the way that we react to things are completely different, because we are all different. Our makeup is all different. We are completely different.
Yeah, it was last night again, talking to a friend. She asked the question about my running streak, 10 plus years. She said, how are your knees? Because I understand that when doing this again, she's just floating it out there.
Yeah.
I have heard that it's really hard on your knees. That's a totally legitimate question.
Yep.
My response to her is I didn't have a knee problem. The fact that I had a partially torn ACL means I don't have 100% range of motion in my right knee. That has caused my left hip to take a little bit more action than it needs to. So that caused me to have left hip problems that I had to work through. But other than that, I've been fine and basically pain-free. But that's not necessarily true of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
They get out and they go, like my son-in-law went out running and his knees were just screaming at him.
Yeah.
And I said, don't do it. It's the old joke about doctor, it hurts when I do this. And you make a motion and the doctor says, well, don't do that.
Yeah. No, and I'm a prime example of that same situation there. Like it depends on a lot of things, but your physical geometry of your body, like how your legs even are laid out. Like I'm knock-kneed, where my knees actually point, the opposite of bow-legged. My legs aren't straight, and I was overweight, and I was running on concrete. I did it for 11 years and totally destroyed one knee. I had to have a knee replacement when I don't even know if I was 40 yet. So the possibilities of how that works, like people, it's like losing weight. Some people lose weight in their chest. Some people lose weight in their stomach. Some people lose weight in their butt. I mean, it is what it is. It's all different depending on your physical attributes and your DNA and those types of things, your genetics.
Yeah. And there are some generalities, like, you eat a lot of calories, you gain weight. There's some interesting generalities at work.
Right.
But you can give the same two people the same amount of calories and they will gain weight differently.
Yep.
And that's the reality. So as I said, even to my sons who kind of follow my regiment, I said, let's just pick and choose, guys.
Right.
You need to go through each one with your body, because you're not a clone of me.
Right.
You've got half of your mother, so you've got to kind of figure out what works. And so we just kind of picked and choose. And my one son, my older son, has his regiment kind of down. My younger son is still working on his kind of the trial and error. And I said, there isn't any other way to get beyond the trial and error.
Yeah.
You have to try it and, fail. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah,
I
it's
lose
funny.
weight in my feet.
She had to went down a size. Typically, you go up a size as you get older, or up a half a size anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. My son, he went to the dentist a couple weeks ago, or last week for the first time, and I've always noticed like he's got this, he's got that two front teeth gap in the middle, and he's had it ever since. And my daughter, when she was, his age, like as the teeth come in, they close up and they push down. Well, we didn't even really think anything of it, but he's missing two teeth, which is genetic. My dad was missing a tooth. My brother was missing a tooth. And so his teeth are not going to close in the front until,
Right.
if he has the adult teeth, they come in, or when he gets a little bit older, they put him in braces and they put a couple teeth in there for him. So it's one of those things that's just kind of funny. You see this little kid running around with that gap, and he's now you know he's going to have it permanently until we can get it fixed. But that's always a possibility. Those are things that can happen, and you never know until you get there.
Yeah, Nikki, to answer your question, so I was having lower back problems probably 30 years ago plus. And so I was working out with a masseuse, and the masseuse happened to be an ex professional tennis player. And the masseuse said the reason why I was having lower back pains was I was building up my lower body, but I wasn't building up my core and my upper body. And so she said to balance that, you got to take care of your core. So years and years and years ago, I knew my core was important. People are like, your core has to do with your back. Yeah, your system's like dominoes, right? If you strengthen one, it pulls on the other that's weak. And so there's a symmetry that you have to achieve in your body, or else you'll have problems. And so, yeah, the back problems, but again, core solve that.
Yeah, and I mean that's just like you were talking about with the knee. I had the same issues when I had my knee replaced. Like, you change something in your body. Like my gait was completely different than you get a knee replacement, and now it changes. And my hip and back were out of whack for a while. I had to hit the chiropractor for a while. I've even heard David Goggins talk about like some of the situations where he has, and now he spends like 4 or 5 hours a day stretching. Not that anyone has that amount of time like he does, but
Mhm.
that had taken care of a lot of the problems that he had where he was just not stretching. So it's really finding out where that imbalance is and trying to change it and fix it.
Yeah, friend and I were talking about yoga, and the thing is, I do all these things to strengthen myself, and then I do yoga to elongate, right, to get everything stretched back out. So again, I had to learn this the hard way, right, like everybody else. I wish that I had a complete strength training group assigned that you have, like with an NFL football team, who makes sure that you're completely balanced. I don't have that kind of money or that
Yeah.
situation, so I had to trial and error it on my own, and it takes a minute.
Yep. Got to find the resources. And if you don't have them, then you make the resources.
Exactly. But that's the point about the life being a lot more tailored than we want it to be. And so a lot of times people will say, for example, I'm just now starting a kind of a super green because I haven't used super greens before. And so I'm going to experiment a little bit on because it gives me a lot of the vitamins I want in it kindly a different way. And I want to see how my body processes that. Does my
Right.
body process